Hello, Max. How are you?
It's fine, Karen. How are you doing? Sorry, I was muted.
I know. I'm doing okay now that the Zoom website's up. It wasn't working this morning, so
Yeah, went out in the
that's
middle of a
always an
meet.
issue.
Went out in the middle of a meeting I had this morning.
Yeah, the website was down.
It was down a lot last week.
Good morning.
Yeah. Morning, Chad. Hey, little miss. What you doing? What you doing? All right. Did everyone have a good weekend?
It's starting to get hot, but I think today's gonna really get hot.
It's Iowa. It's August.
Picked a hot weekend to
So,
clean
yeah.
windows.
You can come over and practice on my house anytime.
How about your power? You got power and internet?
I do. I am back.
Good.
Got power a week ago at 10 o'clock at night. And I was surprised to know how many lights I had left on the house. So, but yes, all's good. All is good now. What you doing? What you doing? What you doing? Yeah. All right. Hello, Wendy.
Hi.
Hello, Wendy. Thanks
Hi, George.
for speaking. What a trying time you are in. I don't know how you're keeping that smile so broad. Good for you.
Oh, thanks, George. And actually, John Lawrence is going to be our primary speaker today because he's been the head of our planning. And so he's on here somewhere.
He is.
Yep, I'm here.
Hello, John. Um,
Hey, Chad.
Hi, George.
Last week, I spoke to, at the same time, I spoke to a club, a Rotary Club in Davenport that meets at the same time as we do.
Oh, great opportunity for you then.
It was very good. Really good meeting. They're having combined in person and online.
Okay. Did you physically travel there then?
No, I stayed online. I told them that was the only way I would do it.
Okay.
And they have really cool masks. with the Rotary logo and their club name on it. Have you heard of those masks or?
Yes, we actually will have some masks
Oh, good.
available through the club. Yep. So,
Great.
They are not the Rotary Club of Ames masks. They are people of action.
yeah.
Oh, but it has our logo.
And it's a district initiative.
Correct.
It has the
Blue.
Rotary logo, not our club specific.
They're blue.
Okay. Neat. I think this had their name on it. I would expect.
How many members do they have? Do you know?
There were 23 sitting 6 feet apart, and they had the pledge to the flag and everything in that room, and then they had 19 online.
About half and half.
Yeah. It's really interesting to go to all these clubs and see how they do things differently.
Mm-hmm. "48 participants and growing."
We will have quite a few.
I think Wendy will be a very big draw today.
And for those of you currently on, I apologize for last week's meeting. I had been recording it, but my power was out, so I was working off of a little generator, which went out in mid-meeting, and it lost the recording. So I was unable to share that information, both of Oliver's meeting and of Jenny's and the school's meeting with you. So my apologies to that.
Give it another minute or two.
We have Louis on. Louis, are you here?
I see, Louis. That's one of the first things I always
Louis is
check.
there.
I always check to make sure the music committee's on.
Yeah, I'm here.
Up to 65. That's good.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'll continue. There'll be more coming. So whenever you
Yeah, I think,
want to start, I'm sure they have a lot of information.
and I think, Karen, right, prior to our song, you'll be also sharing something, right? But what we're going to do now is welcome everyone to the meeting of the August 24th meeting, the Rotary Club of Ames. We have a great program lined up today. But just to kick off our meeting, we're going to have Louis Bannett lead us in our welcome song. And I believe there's actually something that would also precede that.
You are right.
Yeah, I'm trying to see who's on the sharing their screen with me at the moment.
Oh.
So I'm trying to stop that sharing. There we go. And,
Okay.
Are we ready?
And
Are we
I
ready?
need to get.
We're almost ready.
Okay.
You want to play the one song? You want to play the one? We're ready? I'm ready when you're ready.
Okay. Well, hello. Well, before we launch into the welcome song, I have a surprise. For fun today, I have an audio clip to test your memory. Karen will play it, and when it is complete, hold up your hand if you remember hearing it on the radio. Play it, Karen.
Can't hear it yet, Karen.
You didn't hear it?
No.
I like the beat, but it's hard to dance to.
Well,
Yeah, on your sharing, you have to make sure you click to share the audio as well.
Okay, let me look here.
Well,
Dance.
Karen, we could try it another time if when we're ready, if it's not ready. So.
Okay, well, I thought it worked, but you know how that works. So anyway, okay.
Okay.
All right, take it away, Louie.
I thought you could hear.
All right, we'll just do the welcome song
Go
this
ahead,
time.
Louis.
Here we go. Welcome to you from Ames Rosary, Nevada, London, or Gay Paris, from far off lands or the USA. We're glad that you are here today. Come back again whenever you're near. Join us and then we'll make it clear. Around the world you will always be. Welcome at Rotary.
Thank you, Louie, for the welcome song. We're up to 69 participants today, 70 now on our Zoom call. And if everyone who is not going to be presenting would please mute themselves, that would be wonderful. At this time of each meeting, we usually recognize those people either in our club or others that we know might need some extra thoughts and might need special thoughts from us. And I'm not aware right now of anyone specifically. But what I did want to do is just remember that there are many people in our city and in our state who continue to struggle as a result of, most recently, the derecho. I know that there are farmers who are struggling. There are utility workers. There's residents who remain in a challenged situation with regards to cleanup or without utilities. And we just ask at this time as our Rotary Club to collectively just remember all of those and pass on some special thoughts to them this day. And it sounds like it's going to be a really hot week to finish the cleanup, unfortunately. We'll see if this is our last hot week of the summer or not. Every time we think that, it's probably not. So not many announcements today, but Karen, if you'd share, I know there's a nice picture that we wanted to share with the group as a reminder. And there it is. So the miracle field is taking shape. Oh, you went a little bit too far. So there's a nice picture of our miracle field as it takes shape. I know that stay tuned for further announcements on the grand opening, which may or may not be virtual or in person. As is the rest of this world, it's kind of moment by moment. And also stay tuned from our club and individuals who are going to help us determine how we might use this facility to help serve our local community and residents and neighboring residents of all abilities. So we're very excited that we're able to help lead this initiative. And no other announcements that I have for you today, because I know that we have a full program. I want to get right to it. What we have today, we have our own club member, Dr. President Wendy Wintersteen, and we also have John Lawrence from Iowa State University. And President Wintersteen is gracious enough to be with us during these times of ever-changing and challenging leadership moments, and she navigates new territory. And I know that John Lawrence, who is our Vice President of Extension and Outreach, is also walking right alongside of her and helping her navigate this pandemic and the reopening of the university and the welcoming back of the students. So we just thank both of them for their time today. I'm going to turn it over to them. As usual, hopefully we have some time at the end for questions. So you could type your question in the chat towards the end there, and then we'll try to get to those, and we'll also have an opportunity for people to raise their hand and ask some questions. So we'll just turn it over to Dr. Wintersteen and John Lawrence.
Well, wonderful, Chad. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Back a month or so ago, we were talking with our colleagues at the Ames Rotary saying, well, we'd be happy to give an update on our planning. And here we are in the midst of it, no longer really talking about what we had planned for the fall semester, but really doing the fall semester and making changes probably almost every day as we think about how we get through a successful fall 2020 at Iowa State University. John Lawrence needs no introduction really in Iowa and around the nation. He is an agriculture economist, a professor here in the Department of Economics, has worked in extension almost all of his career, and does an extraordinary job for Iowa farmers and for the agribusinesses in the state, and their interest in knowing what's going on around the world in markets and other economic issues. Currently, John serves as a vice president for extension and outreach. But when we got ready to do fall planning, I knew that I had to appoint an individual that would really spend every day and night thinking about how the university developed the plan for a successful opening. And I knew that John Lawrence could do that work. So I'm so pleased that he would come and provide this update. And both of us will be available for questions at the end of his presentation. So John, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, President Wintersteen, and thank you, Ames Noon Rotary, for the opportunity to share with you our plan for opening up this fall. As Dr. Wintersteen said, back when we accepted this invitation, we were still partway through the planning phase, and students hadn't arrived yet. I want to share a little bit of that background of where we started back in the spring to help bring you up to speed to where we are. And then, of course, as we had students arriving, things that we've done all the way up through even last weekend. And so with that, I've got a few slides here. If I can get, I'll see if I can share my screen. And let me try one more time here. And now, there, is that
Looks
better?
good, John.
All right.
Looks good.
All right. As we said, we started last April. I got a phone call late in April, and the president was putting together this executive committee for fall planning, and she had a charge to the committee of what she was hoping to accomplish. And there was 10 or 11 key points in there, but a couple important ones that really was the basis for our planning process is that, the primary imperative or the highest priority was really to have the health and well-being of our students, faculty, and staff while continuing our mission, our fundamental core as being a land-grant university. So in March, we had kind of shut down for health and safety reasons because we weren't sure what we were dealing with. The rest of the nation was shutting down at the same time. As we started looking toward fall, and as cities, counties, states, the nation was reopening, we knew we needed to do that as well, but do it in a safe way. The other key point there is that it's not expected that we're going to be able to eliminate 100% of the risk, but rather, develop a plan that continuously monitors and evaluates risk and adapts to mitigate that risk. And I'll share some examples of how we're doing that. So this committee that I chaired, there was about a dozen or 15 people on that committee. We met every day from the 1st of May up until mid-August. We still continue to meet a couple of days a week. But we're really turning over the planning phase over to our response teams. We stood up university response teams here in mid-August or earlier, and they're really the go-to people now that we're in session. So this planning committee is winding down. But there were some other key committees who were equally as important. The Academic Continuity Working Group led by Vice Provost Anne-Marie van der Zanten really led our academic core about changing our calendar. We moved classes up a week. We're going to end right before Thanksgiving. What mode of delivery and how those decisions were made really come out of her committee. And it was filled with faculty members, our associate deans. The president of our government and student bodies was a part of that committee. The Research Continuity Working Group also set out guidelines how to keep our researchers safe and their faculty and staff and continue our research mission through the summer and fall as well. And in total, there were a dozen working groups. Many of them started back in March and even some as early as January when we started thinking about bringing home our study abroad students. And I think we're up to about day 210 of COVID at Iowa State. Because many people on this campus have been working on it daily since way back in the spring. The strategy we developed for our plan was really a comprehensive approach for health and safety. And there's kind of 3 or 4 key components to it. And I'll go through each of these. But one was really to ingrain these 4 healthy behaviors you see across the bottom of the screen. Our Cyclones Care campaign about wearing a face covering, maintaining that physical distancing, washing your hands regularly, and staying home if you're ill. And that's really the bedrock, is really a prevention strategy. These practices to prevent the spread are fundamental to what we're trying to do. And in addition to that, we looked at how we reduce the footprint of the campus, reduce the number of people on campus, whether they be students or faculty or staff, and I'll speak more to that here in a moment. Another key component was really being able to quickly identify and isolate any positive cases. And so that's where our testing strategy comes in. We did our own testing here in-house with our Thielen Student Health Center folks collecting the samples, and then our veterinary diagnostic laboratory doing the analysis. And really the veterinary diagnostic lab was a real game changer for Iowa State. Their ability to do large scale test analysis, as they do in the livestock world, allows us to get our responses within 24 hours and in time to actually take some action to get those people quickly identified and isolated. We also stood up our own contact tracing team. We have over 50 contact tracers that are doing that, as well as case management, and then identified and set aside isolation and quarantine space for those students living on campus. The testing, the analysis, the contact tracing are all done in-house. We're not relying on Story County or Iowa Department of Public Health. We share our information with them instantaneously, but we're doing all of this ourselves. The Cyclone Cares campaign I mentioned, it really has these 4 healthy behaviors are critical. We started a social media campaign back in mid-August with these. We have signage that's consistent everywhere you go on campus. And even on even out in the Ames community, the city of Ames, many of the businesses, Cyride are all using the same branding. So the consistency in the message, whether it be physical branding, like this banner you see inside the Memorial Union, or the social media branding. We even have stickers now to put on, backpacks or laptops or other places with carrying the same message with the same look. We also have had the first week of classes, we had ambassadors out greeting students, handing out hand sanitizers or masks or those stickers, thanking students for wearing their mask, which is required, but just a constant reminder. And we stood up a mask patrol starting Thursday of that first week of classes. Our Department of Public Safety added some additional staff that was walking around campus, particularly in the evenings. We have very good compliance during the daytime and in classrooms, but we noticed after hours, students were maybe a little more lax. We've added patrol to kind of walk around reminding students that positive reinforcement that COVID doesn't take a rest, we can't either. And so we stood those up as one of those adjustments we made on the fly as a need that we saw. The other thing I would say, if you've been following our planning, is our face covering message has evolved. As we started back in May, thinking about bringing faculty and staff back in the summer, we talked about face coverings are encouraged. Well, July 1, they become required for faculty, staff, and students on campus in buildings. This is a message from August 5th that went out that it's required on campus in buildings and where you cannot physically distance, but we really were encouraging face coverings anywhere in Ames to help protect the community. Cyride about that time had gone to requiring face coverings as well. But our message there was whether you're out shopping or just walking down the street, we encourage you to wear face coverings. That was the 5th of August. The 21st of August on Friday, we tightened the message down even further. President Wintersteen put out this message to all faculty, staff, and students. We put it out through our campus alert system to go check the email that effective immediately. All on-campus and off-campus gatherings of students must comply with these health orders. That includes wearing appropriate face coverings, limiting the size of gathering, and ensuring social distancing. And again, an example of where we are reading the information, the data, looking at the examples, and making adjustments to try to correct actions where we need to. So we've stepped up the game on the face coverings. Another key component of our strategy was reducing the campus density. We put more classes online. I think there's been a lot of talk about that. If we were meeting in person, we limited classroom capacity to 50% of the typical room capacity to provide more spacing. Face coverings were required, so even if they were closer than the 6 foot, they had face coverings on the whole time. For faculty that may have difficulty speaking to a lecture room of that size, we've added microphones. We've also have a bigger space that allows more space between the faculty member and the students to provide more protection for both the faculty member and the students. And then for our faculty and staff, we have more alternative work arrangements to allow them to work at home rather than coming into the offices. What's the impact been? Well, as of that first week of classes, about 44% of our enrollment, our student credit hours, if you will, were face-to-face or a hybrid, which meant they had at least one meeting during the week that was face-to-face, and the rest was online. So that's over half of our credit enrollment was online. Again, reducing that density. And another measure of it, if you will, is that our library, they compared to a couple of years ago, the typical first few days of classes were running at 40% of what we would typically have in the library. So fewer students on campus. If you walk around campus during, when classes change, it's a very different feel. It feels much more like a summer session. There's about a third of our faculty and staff that are working remotely. Some days and come in on others, but it reduces the overall campus footprint. The quickly identifying and isolating positive cases, as I said, we're doing our own in-house testing, analysis, and contact tracing. The Thielen Student Health Center is swabbing those individuals. The test is done at the Veterinary Diagnostic Lab, and we get a very quick turnaround. And as I said, we do our own contact tracing, which interviews those cases that are positive. Who have they had contact with in the last 48 hours, where they've been within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes. That's the CDC guideline for contact tracing. From there, we begin to identify those other people that we need to call. And so we contact them. Those that are positive, if they're living in our dormitories or apartments, we'll put those into isolation space. I believe it's Linden Hall is our isolation space, and then Oak Elm we use for quarantine, and that's those who've been in close contact by that CDC definition. For testing, many of you are aware, we started move-in early this year, August 3rd, which is 2 weeks ahead of schedule. We actually had a test run for those students who spent the summer in our housing on July 31st, to kind of work the kinks out of the system. But we had a full-blown testing machine going at the Lead Rec Center. We had 20 swabbers. Students could come in, we would take their temperature, they would pick up their ID card if they were new students. We would print the labels for their test kit. They would go back and get swabbed. They would pick up the keys and leave. And during most of the day, we could get them through in about 10 to 12 minutes per person. So very quick move through. Took the swab. Those tests went hourly over to the Veterinary Diagnostic Lab, and we got the results back. We said we tested over 8,000 students at move-in, and I'll show you those numbers to you here in a moment. Again, as part of our testing strategy, the contact tracing will identify those that have been in close contact. We're also looking at, well, let me back up. We tested at move-in. You're also testing throughout the semester our students, faculty, and staff who have symptoms or have been in contact with a known positive. And we're testing those at Thielen 5 days a week. And then we're also looking at targeted populations of students or faculty or staff that we either are, through following our data, we see that there may be a rise in a particular dorm floor, or maybe it's someplace else that we're seeing increased numbers. We might go in and test all of the students on that floor just to make sure what we're dealing with. We also have a daily symptom checker software. A text message goes out to faculty, staff, and students every morning. They can choose to get it by email if they like. That reminds you, check your symptoms. Do you have a fever? Have you developed a cough or sneezing? What about your sense of taste and smell? Get that every day. You answer the questions. If you have the symptoms, it will direct you on to what you should be doing. 1, staying home, but 2, contact your supervisor if you're faculty or staff. Contact Thielen Student Health about possibly testing. But just an ongoing reminder to try to quickly identify those who may be showing symptoms. Let's get them tested and pulled out of the general population. If people test at an alternative site, like maybe McFarland or a Test Iowa site, then we ask them to self-report so that they're in our system. We can begin helping with contact tracing and case management there as well. On the case management and contact tracing, Story County and Iowa Public Health are notified of the test results. The Veterinary Diagnostic Lab is approved by a state hygienic lab. Part of that approval process is they forward the information on to the county and the state. Public Health is identified, or ISU Public Health team is notified of the positive cases, and that begins the case investigation. There will be an investigator assigned. They could interview the positive individual, and they provide guidance around isolation and the resources and compile a list of those close contacts, as we said. Then the contact tracers pick up and call those individuals who've been in close contact to let them know what they should be doing. We monitor this information daily as the leadership team. There's metrics that we're tracking so we can see what's going on, not only the number tested and the number positive, but also, you know, are there key locations where we're seeing maybe a higher than normal examples that we ought to be watching? What about the mix between students, faculty, and staff? Those types of decisions that will help guide our actions going forward. We really then are looking at a range of possible options. We started off at a reduced capacity, as I said, at kind of 50% capacity and over 50% of our students online. But as we go forward, we may take additional actions. If we identified intramural sports as a commonality among our common, you know, positive cases, then maybe we look at shutting down that particular sport where those positives are coming from. If we see a higher number in a particular classroom or department, what's going on in there, and can we make changes in that? So rather than simply shutting down the entire campus, we can have the information to go in and target those decisions and pull some additional levers to try to keep control of what's going on here on campus. And you've seen some actions of that regarding the memo last Friday, as an example. This is our move-in test results. These were people from, again, we had a trial run with some on July 31st through August 16th, day before classes started. If you take a look at that, it's kind of reported out by week, but we tested 8,094. 97.8% were negative, 2.2%, 175 of those tested positive. These were all asymptomatic. Anybody who had a fever that day, we did not run them through lead, but sent them to Teelan and tested as well. Many of these students chose to go home to go through their isolation phase rather than moving into Linden Hall. But we did have some that did stay with us here, and we have arrangements made to move them into that building. They get their meals delivered once a day, 3 meals delivered once a day. They have their own refrigerator and microwave. We have staff living on site in those facilities to make sure those students are well cared for. Same on the quarantine site as well. This number of 2.2% is low. We were very happy about it and not particularly surprised. Our statistical modeling, looking at the zip codes of where our students come from, we predicted something in the 2 to 2.5 range, and we come in right on target with that. And as we go into our next phase of testing, which is at Teelan for those who have symptoms or those who've been near someone who has tested positive, the data might look much more like our Story County data or through Test Iowa, where you have more of a biased sample. Those that aren't feeling well get tested. Those who've been near someone who's a positive get tested. And we would expect our numbers to increase as we shift from this general population to the more specific ones. So with that, that's a quick overview of our plans. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions, or Dr. Wintersteen is here if you have questions for her as well.
And John, I'll just let you know that there was a chat to me. How hard is it to get our students to share their contact information so we can in fact do the contact tracing? I think we've had a pretty good response. What do you have to say about that?
Certainly one of the things that we pushed on pretty hard was to get updated cell phone numbers and addresses here on campus. And we knew that going in, and we had a strategy for that, because oftentimes maybe the only phone number we had is when they moved here as freshmen, and now they're seniors and have moved 2 or 3 times. So we've been working hard on getting updated information. And then certainly our contact tracers are very persistent. They'll keep trying, whether it's phone calls or emails, to try to catch those individuals that they need to talk to.
And those individuals really have an obligation. they have to respond to us eventually, you know, and the sooner the better, obviously, but there is an obligation there for them to participate in the contact tracing. The next question is about the mask requirement related to students, and what is the mask expectation for faculty and staff? And for faculty and staff, it's very clear that face coverings are required, and we expect them to do that. Now, we haven't made the statement about them and what they do off campus as directly as we have for students, but we know the city last Tuesday passed at least a decision to look at a mask mandate for Ames, Iowa, and we think that's an important discussion, and we'll see where that ends up. The related question was, what about students who live off campus, and why didn't we test them before school got started? And I'll just make a quick response and have John add in too, but testing supplies are not that easy to access. We knew that we wanted to be sure that our students in residence halls in that living space, that we understood the baseline there. Testing is a snapshot. It's good for the day that it occurs and what's going on. And to use up really limited supplies that are available out there for testing, that was not recommended by our testing team. But John, would you want to add to that?
I think you summarized it well. There's a limited supply. You've all heard of supply chain challenges. We wrestled with that as well to get the test kits we needed and the reagents and so on. Secondly, we were focusing on those in congregate living arrangements. You know, you think of a dorm floor that may have 60 students on it. We wanted to get a good snapshot of what was going on there. And so that's where we focused our attention initially. And now, as we said, we're shifting over to all faculty, staff, and all students are available to test, you know, using a symptom checker, or if they feel that they've been in contact with someone.
John, can you see the chat screen?
Yes.
Can you see that next question on symptom checker?
Yeah, the symptom checker does go out to all faculty, staff, and all students. You know, they can choose to ignore it. I'll admit that, but we're getting a pretty good response rate. As an example, as Wendy said, I lead our extension program. We have people throughout the state, they get the symptom checker as well. So it's something there as a constant reminder. We'll continue to push that through social media and through our students holding each other accountable of encouraging them to use the symptom checker.
The next question that I see is about how has COVID affected the international students? And unfortunately, at Iowa State, we've seen a real decline in international students as we've seen the issues related to visas. So our students are having trouble getting visas to come and study at Iowa State University. That's really a tragedy for all of our other students, because international students have always been a big part of the Iowa State community. So we now have a new international students that started this fall semester virtually and online. Because of visa issues. John, do you want to take the next question?
President Wintersteen, I have a question actually that came in via email, if you wouldn't mind. So this question says, with regards to President Wintersteen's Friday email message, what do you say to those who think your messaging was connected to the BLM protest that took place and no messaging went out prior to the 801 parties that took place last Saturday and were mostly attended by white students?
So the message was not connected to Ames Black Lives Matter. That is simply not true. There was no connection to Ames Black Lives Matters and their protest. And at their protest that they had on Friday night, Chief of Police Mike Newton shared that with the individuals who protested on Friday night. We had hoped that our efforts prior to now a weekend ago, that we wouldn't have seen such a terrible situation that we saw. And we talked at length all last week on what should be our response to those gatherings that were so unacceptable and so risky. And it really did take us the week to make a decision on what was going to be the action that we took.
Thank you.
Certainly.
There's a question about enrollment of on-campus versus those online, and we'll, I don't have those numbers off the top of my head. We know essentially what the enrollment in online classes is, but whether they're taking the online class from here in Ames or whether they're taking it from their home, we're not sure. We do know that there's something around, I want to say 3,500 or more students that were 100% online before classes started. Some of those were at their choice. They wanted to study from home, but others, it was just the courses they took all happened to be online. So it was a bit of a mix.
The next question is, go ahead, John.
No, I was just going to move on to one, would testing be available for sororities and fraternities? Again, it's available to all students. One of the, is we have talked about these targeted, again, we still have limited resources, but if we saw that there was a rise in certain sorority or fraternity, that may be where we choose to target those limited resources. So they're an important part of our overall student community.
And John, would you just want to talk a little bit about the fact that it looks like we'll have a Test Iowa clinic in Ames?
Yeah, so the City of Ames has really been leading that effort. McFarland and Mary Greeley is a big part of it. We've certainly been supportive, but it looks like there will be a Test Iowa clinic set up at the Research Park. We think as early as the 31st, so a week from today, and that they will begin there, I think, in earnest. You know, that's kind of their setup day and their first testing, but I think by Monday, then the following week, they will be going at full tilt or shortly thereafter, I should say, the next 1st of September. So that will be open to all members of the public. You don't need to be symptomatic. You don't need to have a known positive to be tested there. So that will add to our testing capacity here in Ames.
John, I'll go ahead and take the next question. It is asking are some classes in person, but also being video taped? And yes, we have the capacity for all of our courses to be able to be moved online relatively easily, unless it's a studio or a laboratory, which makes it a much more complex issue. So our courses are developed under a tool called Canvas that allows for this movement to more of an online delivery mechanism. So in case a student needs to quarantine for 14 days, they can still have a way to access class. Do you want to take the next one, John?
How good is testing, and what about false negatives and false positives? The one thing that we've learned about the testing that our VDL is using is very, very sensitive. So it's a very good test, very sensitive test. And what brought that to light was we had students who had a negative test or had a positive test when they were here. They were upset about having to go into isolation. So they went home and got another test and it came back negative. So they said, oh, I'm off the hook. And no, our test was sensitive enough. It was picking up examples of virus in the system that their test that they had taken had not. So it's a very good test. Right. Highly specific, highly accurate.
And then the next question is, any updates regarding fall athletics and their testing protocols? And so our athletic department, under the direction of Jamie Pollard, has truly developed an excellent safety plan for our student athletes. A young man named Mark Coberly has been leading that effort for months. So there will be very extensive testing of our football team and associated staff and coaches. And that's been going on since those student athletes started coming back to campus. The veterinary diagnostic clinic also processes those tests as well, so that very rapid response can be obtained versus the longer response if you go to another testing approach. I think those are all the questions I can see.
I think they are. Yeah, thank you so much. Looks like one more snuck in here. So is the test used by ISU a mouth swab or nose swab test? And is there any evidence one or the other being more effective?
So it is a nose swab. And as John coined a new term in his presentation, the swabbers. So COVID has given us a big vocabulary that's new. So John, thanks for adding swabbers to that. So it is a nose swab. There's a lot of conversation about saliva tests where you spit into a tube and you're seeing that in the news. At this point, the state of Iowa has not approved the use of the saliva test for official recognition anyway.
The other thing I would say is we're using what's called a mid-turbinate. So it's a short Q-tip in the nose. It's not the big long one that scares people. Yeah. As we talked to students after they had gone through testing, they said it wasn't bad. If they needed to, they would test again. So we didn't scare anybody off. Whether it is the saliva test or the swab test, they both use the same PCR approach. So the sensitivity of the analysis should be the same.
And the variability might be in how the sample is collected.
Thank you, John and President Wintersteen. Thank you so much for taking time out of what I know is a packed day every day, and every day brings something new. And there's a lot of people who need to know and want to know, and we just, as a Rotary Club of Ames, appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to share with us and help us inform our community, help us impact our businesses and our residents as well. And we're all in this together. So thank you so much for your leadership in this regard. Next week, Rotary Club, we have actually Nora Tobin presenting. Nora with Self-Help International, a Rotary Scholar Work in the Global Economy. Thank you to Liz Beck for lining that one up. We're excited to hear from Nora next week. What an amazing group of programs we have had. Thank you to the program committee, Kelsey, and all of those that are helping her line these up. I think if you're a member of the Rotary Club of Ames, you are very informed and you're very connected to what's going on, and this is all happening in real time. So we appreciate the programming committee. The thought for the day I had was, I think, relevant, especially for President Wintersteen and John as they navigate this pandemic and all that it brings. And the quote was, "Change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past or present are certain to miss the future." John F. Kennedy. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you to the Rotary Club of Ames for being faithful. We had 81 participants today during our meeting online, and know that as we approach the fall, we will continue to evaluate our virtual meetings as well as perhaps blending in some hybrids if we can do that safely and if there's some interest. That's what I had today, so please join me in the four-way test, and we'll look forward to our program for next week. We'll get done a little early today, so in all that we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendship? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you, and we'll see you next week.